Hey folks, so we are back for another session. Of course, this chapter is going over chapter 6 in volume 1 of the CCNA 200-301 official cert guide, volume 1, right? And what we're going over, we are going over in the in chapter 6. We are at the section now where we're talking about securing remote access with Secure Shell. Now, the previous session we went over the theory of securing remote access with Secure Shell and actually how it's done. So as promised, today we are going to go ahead and get that done. So what we have here, hopefully you guys can see my screen, created a small virtual lab. We have our switch, right? Our multi-layer switch that can of course perform layer 2 and layer 3. And I have a Windows PC actually. Just to let you guys know about EVE-NG. It does come with a virtual PC pre-installed. That's like a Linux-based PC, but I was having issues with it, testing it for you guys before presenting it. So I went ahead and installed a Windows PC in my virtual environment in Eve. So we're going to see how it looks to SSH into a network infrastructure device, how it's going to look to SSH to a network infrastructure device using SSH and how that traffic looks. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and console in to this switch. Okay, because of course there's no configurations yet. I went ahead and wiped it before we started the lab. So let's go ahead and jump on in. And when I say console, whenever you click on a device in EVE-NG, a network infrastructure device at that, you're virtually consoling in, right? You're layer oneing into the device. All right. So we're in, the device is on. As you can see, it doesn't have a host name. It doesn't have no configuration. Now let's go ahead and verify it. Let's do a show startup config. Startup config is not present. Okay. Well, let's do a show run. All right. So that confirmed that, but let's take a look. It comes with all the default configuration on this multi-layer switch. Okay, so there's nothing here. There's nothing here. So as I shared with you guys before, there are a couple of things that we need, right? If we're going to secure our network device, our switch with SSH access, we need to do a couple of things, right? We need to, of course, give it a host name. We need to give it a domain name, right? We need to associate with a domain, right? Whether that be example.com or ryan.com, et cetera, right? Then we need to go ahead and create a crypto key, okay, for that key generation for SSH, okay? And of course, for our example, we need to go ahead and create local usernames so that we can go ahead and test that access. And last but not least, we need to go ahead and go into a line configuration mode for the VTY lines, right? And if you guys forgot, the VTY lines is right here. Here's are the different line configuration modes you can get into. We got aux line configuration mode. We got con line configuration mode, which is con meaning console. Okay, but we're going to focus on the VTY lines for today. So let's go ahead and get started. And one thing I did forget to mention, right? Since we are going to try to access the device, we need to make sure we give it an IP address as well. So we're going to configure all of that today, right? So let's go ahead and start this. So let's get in, right? We are in privilege exec mode, right? The next mode we need to get into is global configuration mode, right? Why is that, right? Because we need to make changes to the actual device. And the only way we can do that, right, is in the global configuration mode. So to get to global configuration mode, we need to go ahead and put configure terminal, okay? So now we're in, right? So one thing off the checklist for the order of operations, first we need to go ahead and give it a host name. So we give it a host name. I'm going to call this switch 1. Okay. All right. So it's there, right? Then I'm going to give it a domain name, right? Or associate it with a domain, right? So I actually played The Legend of Zelda last night, you know, me being a big nerd. So I'm going to associate it with Hyrule.com, right? Right. Of course, in your production environment, whatever the fully qualified domain name is, or the domain name for your environment, make sure you get that. You work with your server guys, and just you get the right information before you put it in. Or if you actually know it and you log into the server yourself, make sure you put that correct information. Okay. So we got that set. Now we need to go ahead and create a crypto key. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Crypto key, right? And remember that command, right? So it's crypto key. We want to go ahead and generate it, right? So we're going to use the command generate, right? And then we're going to put RSA, right? Because we're generating an RSA key. Okay. All right. So let's take a pause real quick, right? So the name for the keys will be switch1.hyrule.com. Okay. So this is our domain, right? This is our domain, right? And this is the name of our device. So what this is saying is when we put in this command, crypto key generate RSA, I will be creating keys for this device in this domain. Okay. So it's asking me for the key modulus size, right? We'll get a little bit deeper in that, but in layman's terms, right? The higher the key modulus, the harder it is for bad actors or hackers to try to break your key to try to access your device. Okay. So since we are in a lab environment, we are fortunate enough to go ahead and we don't have to have um, the highest key modulus, but I'm going to go ahead and just do 2048 because we can do the key modulus in a range from 360 to 4096. Okay, so let's go ahead and do 248, no, 2048, I'm sorry. So we got that set, right? So, and I'm glad this popped up because this is one other piece we need to do, right? I told you guys that we can either use, and it's optional, right? What I showed you guys in that screenshot of the book yesterday. We can use SSH version 1, right? Version 1.99 to be exact. But I want to go ahead and make sure we move to version 2 because, of course, that's where a lot of devices are moving towards. So we're going to go ahead and make sure our device is running SSH version 2. So to do that command, we're going to put IPSSH, okay? And of course, as you can see, we're going to click version because we want to see what versions are supported. Version, question mark. And it tells us 2, protocol version to be supported. So we're going to put 2, okay? So that tells us 2 is supported, right? How can we verify that? Let's do show IPSSH. Okay, so we did that command. And also, we can go ahead and do show SSH. Give me 1 second, right? As a matter of fact, let's not do show SSH. That must show, I don't want to spoil it too early. But as you can see, us doing a show IP SSH, it tells us SSH version enabled is 2.0. So we're good. That's knocked out, and that takes care, if I'm not mistaken, that takes care of step 2 in the config checklist. All right. So next, we need to go ahead and tell, right, the VTY lines, what protocol we're going to allow to remotely access the device. Are we going to allow Telnet? Are we going to allow both Telnet and SSH, or are we going to allow SSH? For this lab, we're going to go, the focus is just SSH, so we're only going to allow SSH. So let's go ahead and go to VTY line configuration mode and make these changes. Okay, so line VTY, and if we question mark it, right, we have those 3 options. Okay, so we're just focusing on VTY for now. VTY meaning virtual terminal. Okay, so and let's do 0 through 15 so we can get all the virtual terminal lines. Okay, so we have a whole lot of options, but the one thing we're just focusing on first is selecting the transport type. Okay, so transport, we're going to put input because again, our host wants to get access going inside the device. Okay, so that's what we're choosing input, right? As you can see right here, define which protocols to use when connecting to the terminal server, right? We can also, right, a quick Easter egg, right? We can also define which protocols to use for outgoing connections, right? If we wanted to, from this device to access another device, we can actually set which protocols we allow to go outside, right? Pretty cool stuff. But for the CCNA, you don't need to worry about anything going outside. We're just focusing on mitigating that stuff inside, okay? So transport input, right? So we have a lot of options, okay? We are only focused on allowing SSH, right? And it tells us TCP/IP SSH protocol, right? And I'm glad this is here, right? So if we're going to use SSH, right? After we put in this command, before we even try to test, we need to make sure that we give the switch an IP address, right? Because it's going to use layer 3 first before it uses the application SSH. Okay, so we need to make sure we assign an IP address, right? I'm sorry, to use the application protocol SSH. So we need to make sure we assign an IP address to the device before we can access it, and we can mitigate the remote access. So let's go ahead and put transport input SSH. Okay, and let's go ahead and save it. Okay, we're going to come back to line configuration mode because there's one other thing we have to do in here. But first, we're going to tackle assigning an IP address. So we're going to keep everything at VLAN 1. I don't want to make this too complex, right? And we'll talk about VLANs in the future. Just to let you guys know, right? Every port, every physical port on a switch, right? No matter if it's a layer 2 or a multi-layer switch, it automatically out the box is in VLAN 1. Okay, so with that being said, VLAN 1 from a layer 2 standpoint has all ports associated with it. Let's take a look at that. So if we blow it up, do show VLAN. Okay, so as you guys can see, all ports are associated with VLAN 1 by default because that is the default VLAN out of the box. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create a layer 3 instance, right, for VLAN 1, okay, for this lab, okay? So how to do that? We're going to do interface VLAN 1, okay? You're going to see a syslog message popped up, and it tells us line protocol interface VLAN 1 has changed state to down, right? So a couple things we need to do, right? Of course, assign an IP address, and we're going to have to enable this virtual interface. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that first, right? Because line protocol meaning layer 2 is not available, right? And if layer 2 is not available, that means layer 1 is not available. Let's take a look at that real quick. So do show IP interface brief. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so boom, right? Go ahead and fix this. Exactly what I showed you guys in the past, right? Whenever we are talking about layer 1 in these earlier chapters, right? Layer 1 needs to be available for layer 2 to work, right? Whenever we do the show IP interface brief command, status means layer 1, protocol means layer 2. Us verifying with this command the status of VLAN 1, this says VLAN 1 is administratively shut down, right? Administratively down, meaning it has the shutdown command associated with it. Let's take a look and see how that looks. Let's go ahead and clear this terminal. I know there's a lot of muck on the screen. Let's do a do show run, right? Interface VLAN 1. Okay, so what does this show us, right? This shows us the running config, right? Because we're configuring the device right now, but we haven't saved any configuration. And it shows us that we have configured the switch virtual interface, right? The correct term for it, right? For VLAN 1, but we haven't assigned an IP address, and the current command, the current status is it is shut down, right? And after we go ahead and configure it, we need to go ahead and make sure we enable it. So first, let's go ahead and give it an IP address. So IP address 10.10.10.10. Well, 10.10.10.1, right? Because this is going to be the gateway, right, for PC1. And we're going to give it a subnet mask, right? So we're going to give it a /24. All right. So we took care of giving it an IP address. Let's go ahead and verify this, right? Boom. So we have an IP address, right? So the last thing we need to do for the switch virtual interface, VLAN 1, we need to go ahead and enable it. So if you do a no shutdown, what I expect is for a syslog message to pop up to say, hey, now the state has changed to up for interface VLAN 1, right? And so if we do our same command, right, where we were trying to verify the interface and the status, we do a do show IP interface brief. We see now layer 1 is up and layer 2 is up for VLAN 1. So we're all good there. We're all good there. We have our communication. We're good, right? So one last thing we need to do for our configuration, we have layer 3 set up. We have SSH enabled for incoming connections to the device. What is the last thing we need to do? We need to make sure we configure local usernames on this device, right? Because you're going to be prompted, right? A remote host is going to be prompted for a username and password combo to access that device, right? So let's go ahead and knock that out. And we're going to do that in global configuration mode, right? So right now I am in interface configuration mode for interface VLAN 1. I'm going to drop down one level, right, to get to global configuration mode. So I'm here, right? So I'm in global configuration mode. Let's go ahead and configure the actual username, right? So username, I'm going to give it myself. We're going to say password, and we're going to make it easy. Admin 123. Okay. So we have that set. We have that good to go. Let's go ahead and verify and just go through our checklist. All right. And make sure that we have everything. So if I go ahead, reset terminal, and I do a show run, let's verify. So we need to have a host name. Do we have a host name? Yes, we have a host name for the device. Are we associated with a domain? Let's go ahead and check. We are associated with a domain. So that's hyrule.com. Okay. Did we generate crypto keys? Right? A new crypto key. Let's go ahead and check that. Let's see if we can see that. We may not be able to see it in the show run, but we can see it in the show IP SSH command. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's do and we'll come back to the show run to verify other few things. Show IP SSH. Okay, awesome. So we see here, right? It tells us the key is generated for switch 1, right? So our SSH RSA key is here. So that's done. That's taken care of. Okay. So next, are we running SSH version 2? That is optional. Okay. But let's make sure we have SSH version 2 because that is the version that we want to run in our lab. We have version 2 running. So we're good there. We're good there. Another optional step, which is step 3 in the config checklist, is did we configure the protocol that we're going to use for incoming connections for VTY lines? I believe we did, and let's just go ahead and verify. So we did configure SSH has the protocol to be used for incoming connections for the VTY lines, or using layer 3 to go ahead and use SSH, which sits at the application layer to access it. So we did set that up, okay? So that's it. We chose SSH as our only protocol to use for incoming connections. And which is not on the config list, did we configure a IP address? We do have an IP address. So we assigned it to a switch virtual interface, right? So we assigned it to interface VLAN 1, right? So that's good there. We're good there. And last but not least, did we configure usernames? We did, right? Even though it's in plain text, this is just a lab. We configure the username David and the password admin@123. So that's done there. So everything is completed for securing remote access using SSH. So let's go ahead and save our configuration. Okay. All right. And what we are going to do is we're going to do a packet capture. Okay. In this packet capture, we are going to verify a few things, that SSH is being used, and of course, just so we can see the flow. Okay. So we got that running, right? Just to show you guys the topology again, we have switch one. That is, we have switch one, we have PC1. PC1 is connected to switch one off of its gigabit 0/0 interface. Okay. So, has switch one is supposed to be doing, of course, BPDUs for spanning tree is sent out every interface. So we're good. We're not going to go indefinite into spanning tree. Let's go ahead and jump into this PC. All right. And like I told you guys, this is a Windows PC. So let's bring it up as it's right next to this packet capture. Okay. So I did pre-configure the PC, and let's look at that information. I believe the command is ipconfig. Okay. So it is in that same subnet for the switch virtual interface VLAN 1. Okay. So the Windows PC is 10.10.10.50. And of course, default gateway is 10.10.10.1, which is switch one, right? Just to give you guys another glimpse, switch one is connected to PC1, vice versa, PC1 is connected to switch one, right? And again, switch one is operating, has a multi-layer switch, right? It's operating at layer 2 and layer 3. All right. So we got that taken care of, right? So let's go ahead and test to see if securing remote access using SSH is properly configured and it works. All right. So let's go ahead and pull up PuTTY, right, in our Windows box. Okay. Let's go ahead and put the IP address of that switch virtual interface, because that's what we're going to use to access the device. So it's going to be 10.10.10.1, right? And the connection type, of course, using PuTTY is SSH, so it already has port 22. So we're good there, right? So let's go ahead and put open, okay? As you guys can see, a couple of things pop up, right? And we'll decipher that in a second, right? And a pop-up came up on the Windows PC, right? The service host key does not match the one PuTTY has. It's telling me here's the fingerprint. Do you allow it? And I'm going to say yes. Okay. Let's go ahead and change these settings so you guys can actually see it. There we go. All right. All right, there we go. Okay, cool. So you guys should be able to see it, right? So we have access now. All right. And let's pull up that login information, right? Because we made local usernames on the switch, but there's one thing we forgot to do, right? We forgot to tell, right, the VTY lines what login method we're going to use. Either we're going to use external servers or we're going to use local, right? So we need to make sure that we put that before we even test anything. So let's get back into VTY configuration mode and put that in, okay? Okay, go ahead, VTY 0. And the reason why I didn't want to put that in, because I wanted to show you guys, how quick and easy it is. You can forget that, okay? All right, so we're in VTY configuration mode, right? I put in login, right? And it's telling me, it's telling me, of course, when I did the question mark, I can put the keyword local to go ahead and do local password checking. And this is going to check for a username password combo that's configured locally, okay? I'm going to go ahead and put local. That's done. We're going to save that configuration, right? And if we go back up to our config, we are going to use what we have configured there. All right. So back on my Windows PC, if I go ahead and put that username, it's going to ask me for that password. And if I go ahead and put that password, maybe I fat fingered it. Whoops. And let's try it again. Admin. Oh, there we go. I knew it was something. There we go. All right. There we go. So admin at 123. Let's see if that works. There we go. So didn't access it. Let's try it again. I'm probably fat fingering it. Let's do it again. All right. So David is the username and admin at 123. Let's see if that worked. Sticky keys is having an issue. And that didn't work. It'll work sometime. There we go. All right. I was fat figuring it. So as you guys can see, right, we now have user access. There we go. We now have user access to the device. So we successfully were able to use SSH to access the device, right? Let's type in a few things, all right? All right, it's telling us no password is set. If we do show, if we do a couple of things, right? I'm doing this for a reason, right? Because we're going to go ahead and take a step away and take a look at, right? We're going to take a look at the packet capture, okay? So if we're taking a look at this packet capture, right? You guys see, right? It's telling us encrypted packet, right? I can't see anything, right? That I'm actually typing. I can't, right? I can't see anything. This is the difference between Telnet and SSH. Okay, this is exactly why SSH is prevalent versus Telnet. As we were talking about before, if we were using Telnet, of course, if Ryan was the network admin, Cornelius, of course, being the bad actor, the threat actor, he could, use a program like Wireshark to go ahead and access the device. Okay. Um, he can use that and of course try to access it, right? Try to access the device and see what he's typing in. And if you guys would like, if you wanted to see the comparison between SSH and Telnet, we can actually do that in our next lab. We can have another fun day next week to see the difference. Matter of fact, we will do that on Tuesday. But I just wanted to show you guys how SSH looks, how it'll look if somebody was using the packet capture and trying to access it. Hopefully this setup was pretty simple. Hopefully me staying at a high level while touching low levels sometimes explains this theory of securing remote access using SSH helped you, right? Tomorrow, for our next lesson, we will be going ahead and jumping into the next session, which within this same chapter, which is talking about enabling IPv4 for remote access. Okay. Well, I hope you guys had fun in this lab fun day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.